Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is an author, mental health advocate, and martial artist. Began his martial arts journey over 25 years ago and now holds a black belt ranking in 3 styles. He had his own school years ago and now teaches private lessons and workshops. His first book, Broke Down Sensei, How I Fought Trauma and Bipolar Disorder from the Outside In, is available on Amazon. And his most recent book was released in May and is titled Internal Jiu-Jitsu, Conquering Mind and Body Resistance by Giving Way. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Julio Rivera. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thanks for having me. That's a great intro.
Thank you. I tell all my guests, I take pride in the intro. I've had many of my guests be like, can you send me that for my voicemail? so yeah, it's that professional voiceover radio print background. I like making that sound good. So, but no, awesome. I truly appreciate your time. I was glad you reached out and I looked into you and I'm like, yeah, we got to chat. This will be a fun one. And I truly appreciate your time.
Cool. Thank you.
What we do with all my guests, I mentioned you've been doing this over 25 years, but I want to go back to the beginning. What we want to know is, where did that first interest come from? That first spark that kicked off your martial arts journey?
You know, I, like a lot of other kids, was always kind of obsessed with martial arts. Even before I started training, there was, back then in New York in particular, I don't know how it was in the rest of the country, but at 3:00 on Saturdays, there was Kung Fu theater.
Nice.
And we lived for that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd watch the old Kung Fu movies and we'd imitate the moves. And, you know, I remember I hadn't been training, but there was a local shop that sold martial arts uniforms and equipment. So I went over to buy a gi and some like ninja slippers, and it was a karate gi. And the guy at the store asked me, "Well, what color belt do you want?" And I said, "Oh, black belt." And he looked at me just out of the side of his eye, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess a white belt then."
That's awesome.
So I had the gi and I had the nunchucks, the homemade nunchucks, but I never asked my parents for lessons at the time. We really couldn't afford it. And I kind of I wanted to look the part, but I didn't really care if I knew it for real or not, you know?
Okay.
And that was kind of a common thing in my neighborhood. I don't know what it was, but I grew up in a really rough part of Brooklyn during the crack epidemic. It was a really violent area, but a lot of guys would pretend to know martial arts. Like they would just be complete fakers, but they would have like the whole getup going, the whole outfit, and they'd have like patches and stuff, but they weren't really martial artists, you know?
Mm-hmm.
My best friend's dad, he was a supposed Kung Fu master himself, but I witnessed him murdering someone when I was 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
And that affected me really, really seriously. I wonder sometimes if that's why I became a martial arts instructor and a self-defense instructor, because of that. But I don't know. I didn't actually start training until I was 23 or 24.
Okay.
Because I was a bodybuilder until then. And I had been competing in bodybuilding throughout my teens and early 20s. And I was too big to train in martial arts at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was really heavy, but I'd always wanted to do it. So I knew that when I quit bodybuilding, when I quit competing, that I'd jump head on into martial arts, and that's what I did. So I loved Steven Seagal movies at the time, and I thought what he was doing was jiu-jitsu, so I started looking for a jiu-jitsu school. And I found a place that did Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo, and I started training there and taking both of those, and training boxing at the same time because one of the coaches there was a boxing instructor. And I just fell in love with it, and it became my new obsession, you know.
How many schools did you look into before you found the one that was the right fit?
I went to one other place, and they're the ones that recommended the place where I ended up. The place
Nice.
that I found at first was a Cali and Filipino martial arts place,
Okay.
but they were really great, and they highly recommended this place, Christek Judo, that I ended up going to eventually, and paid off. Years later, I was still there.
So what was it about it when you found that school, whether you watched a class or tried one out? What was it about it that gave it that feeling that you knew it was the right place and made you want to keep going?
First of all, it had that smell of hard work when you walk in,
Oh, yeah.
It had like these old heavy bags, and it had like this wood paneling on the walls, and it just looked like it's seen some things,
Mm-hmm.
And the sensei, he was 60. He had just turned 60, and he was about 140, 145 pounds. I was about 230 at the time, and he pinned me, and I couldn't move. I was stuck to that mat, and I didn't know what was going on. I could bench press 400 pounds, but I couldn't get this little guy off of me. So I was convinced from that moment on, I wanted to learn what he knew. So that's what caught me.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming, but at that time, 25 some years ago, you had seen like the UFC and heard about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So were you surprised then to see how different Japanese Jiu-Jitsu was from Gracie Jiu-Jitsu?
No, it's funny. I hadn't seen the UFC yet.
Really?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it yet. I had heard of it, but I hadn't seen it.
Okay.
So when I started training, that's when I went and I rented the videotapes. And I was like, wow, this is what I'm doing. Because to me, it looked like what I was training in. Because we were doing a lot of ground fighting and a lot, especially in the judo class. But even in jiu-jitsu, in our style, we had a lot of newaza, and we had leg locks, and we had all these things that I was seeing in MMA. So when I saw Royce Gracie, I was like, wow, that's what I'm doing. That's awesome. He's winning using it. Because, I was used to doing rear naked chokes, and I was used to doing triangle chokes. So it looked the same to me. It wasn't until a little bit later that I realized there was a distinction between BJJ and what I was doing.
And I've never really trained at all in the Japanese style. From my understanding, that some people I've interviewed and talked to is that the Japanese style actually has stand up, where BJJ really doesn't. I mean, a lot of schools now have added it in, more of cross training, but the traditional style of BJJ doesn't really have stand up, where Japanese actually has some kicking and punching in it.
Yeah, we did emphasize kicking and punching as well. My sensei was an amateur boxer, and he fought professionally a little bit, and so he was big on striking as well. So, and then he was a judo player as well. So we were doing judo. So within our Japanese jiu-jitsu, we relied heavily on throws and striking, as well as the submission holds.
Nice. Okay. And I know in the email you said you didn't do a lot of competition, but how long were you at the school before you did did your first tournament?
Not long. I was a yellow belt, so it was just the first belt in judo. I started competing in judo, and I loved it. But I loved it because I hated it so much.
Okay.
I loved it because it scared me so much, and I was terrified of roller coasters back then. And to me, competing, especially in judo, felt like the whole experience of going on a roller coaster. Like gearing up for the match, and the car is just clicking up and up and up and up, and then your heart's in your throat, and all of a sudden the referee says Hajime, and you go, and it's just like a tornado until somebody falls. And it was terrifying for me, but I wanted to put myself through it just so I could get past that terror and eventually start to enjoy it. And it wasn't until 20 years later that I started to enjoy it. But but early on, I competed quite a bit more in judo than I did in jiu-jitsu. By the time I started doing BJJ, my knees had taken a pretty big beating, so I competed less and less. But in judo, I started pretty early. So at yellow and at green and at brown, I was competing in judo, yeah.
Okay. And you were doing judo and Japanese jiu-jitsu at the same time, correct?
I was, yeah.
So when you were competing, did you find it hard at all to like separate in your head? Because I know in tournaments, the rules are different, but between judo and jiu-jitsu, was that any difficulty at all in kind of keeping the jiu-jitsu out when you were competing in judo?
No, because in judo class, when we do randori, we're used to playing within that rule set. So, I'd been so used to sparring in judo that it came pretty naturally when it came time to do it in competition.
Nice. And which style did you get your black belt in first? Was it judo?
Japanese jiu-jitsu was first.
It was first. Talk a little bit about that black belt test. What is a test in that style like?
Well, we had a list of moves for each rank, and they were up on diagrams. Like I'm sure a lot of schools have them up on diagrams up on the wall, from yellow belt on up. So for each belt rank, you had to know all those lists, and then for the black belt, you had to know everything on every list, and then spar everyone in the school, and show a self-defense situation, show judo style randori as well, some weapons defenses. So it was a fairly standard test, just with some very, very hard sparring and making sure you're exhausted. Like a lot of these tests, rely on just beating you up so that you're super tired and having to execute when you're exhausted, which is when it counts, Yep. So that's how the test was. Yeah.
How long did that test last about? Do you remember?
I want to say 2 hours.
Okay. Do you remember how many other people were testing at the same time?
One other person.
Okay.
One other person. Yeah. Ari. I'll never forget Ari. I hope Ari never got into a real fight. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Nice guy, but but I worried about that.
Yeah, my black belt too was just from my traditional Taekwondo school was just one other person. And so many people I talked to, it's like, there's like 30 people testing. There was 40, 20 plus, and I had 2. So I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Well, I had that test was a pleasure compared to my brown belt test for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Really?
And normally Jiu-Jitsu schools, BJJ schools don't test for belts, but my instructor did. And I worked at the school. I was the manager. So I was like one of the first 2 students that he ever taught here in America, like at that school. Mm-hmm. So it was a big deal to get my brown belt from him. So the test was 3 rounds of me. Well, first I had to teach a class, and then it was a round of gi, a round of no gi, and a round of MMA against the entire school. Wow. I'm not talking about a class. I'm talking about the entire school. So everyone lined up by the elevators all the way down the hall, all the way to the mat. And I had to take them all on. And the first round was in the gi. And then in that round, I tore my pec. So I still had the no gi round and the MMA rounds to go. And, I couldn't quit. He asked me if I wanted to quit. And of course I said no. Mm-hmm. So we went on, and there was an MMA fighter, a well-known MMA fighter that happened to be in town. And he walked into the school while the test was going on. And he was like, I don't know, this is like a gang initiation, not a belt test. He just felt like it was completely over the top, And actually, to this day, my ex-wife thinks I got some sort of, like, my brain might have gone through some trauma because of that test, because it was so harsh. Yeah. People talk about it to this day. Wow. It was crazy, but they never had a test like that again, thankfully. It was too much.
Probably a good thing. So how tough was it fighting that kids class, huh?
Yeah, right.
It's like, save them for last. Oh, when you said that, I don't know if you were a Seinfeld fan, but there was the episode when Kramer joined the martial arts school, and he was bragging to all his friends, and they finally went and watched, and he's in the kids class beating up little kids. I just think of that. It made me laugh. So, nice. So what belt level did you first get involved in the teaching side? When did teaching become important to you, or kind of what drew you to the teaching side of it?
When I was a green belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and Judo, I started covering the cardio kickboxing classes, or cardio boxing class, sorry. Okay. I started covering that class first. And then when I was a blue belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, I remember the day Sensei was like, you know what, Julio, teach whatever you'd like to teach today. And he walked off the mat and he let me take the class. So I was a blue belt when I had a Jiu-Jitsu class to myself, a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu class to myself. And by that time, we'd started incorporating Hagana, which is a form of Krav Maga, into our Jiu-Jitsu. So it was a fun time to really get to explore and to teach kind of a mixture of Krav and Jiu-Jitsu and kind of blend everything. It was a lot of fun.
So was that something where, did you ever see yourself as being a teacher before that, or just kind of it happened so you found out you were good at it?
Yeah, I just rolled with it. It wasn't anything I thought about until he asked me to teach that class. And then at that point, as he saw me teaching more and more, he asked me if I ever thought about pursuing it. And he said that he thought I'd be the perfect person to take over his school when he decided to sell.
Wow.
And would that be something I'd be interested in? And, I was honored because the school had been there since the 60s, the late 60s. And I felt like, it was just going to be huge for me to be able to take over the mantle But it ended up not being meant to be. His son ended up coming back and taking over the school, and it worked out because I ended up starting my own place instead, which I think turned out way better.
Yeah. Kind of funny how you said that, because that's some of the people I've talked to, some of the best teachers are the ones that they had no thought of even teaching until their instructor's like, oh, you're teaching tonight, something like that. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Maybe there's something to that. I mean, I know other people who've thought of teaching since they were kids and were also great teachers too, but it's a lot of the ones I've talked to are just kind of, thrown into it, baptism by fire type thing. So
yeah. I think in martial arts, if you want to do it early on, you probably were training from when you were a kid,
yeah,
and sort of got groomed along the way to become an instructor. But I think if you started when you're an adult, I think it kind of catches you by surprise when you end up teaching.
Nice. So when you got your black belts in judo and Japanese jiu-jitsu, you went and joined BJJ. Now, had that been a plan? Were you looking for just some other style? Was it specifically BJJ? Did you explore any other styles other than that?
I was fascinated by the Gracie's success in UFC like everyone else. So I was so used to my sensei saying, oh, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's just judo. It's the same thing. It's just judo. It's the same thing. Because when you looked at it from the outside, it did look like judo groundwork, So to me, I thought, well, I already know that stuff. But when I was teaching at a school in Manhattan, my boss, this was before my BJJ instructor came into the States.
Okay.
My boss at this other school said to me, look, I don't know that you're going to get any better training where you're training. I'll pay for a membership for you to train at Renzo Gracie's to train some BJJ. And that way you'll improve your skills. So I jumped on that opportunity. I mean, tuition there was like probably $250 at the time a month. So I jumped at that opportunity and I started training there. And I took to it really quickly because of the judo. Mm-hmm. But the difference, I'd been exposed to the difference a little bit because I used to write for magazines, and I was writing an article for this MMA grappling magazine. And I interviewed a BJJ guy, and I trained with his student, a purple belt, and I was a black belt in judo at the time. And this kid just wiped the floor with me on the ground.
Wow.
So that's when I figured out that BJJ was different than judo when it came to groundwork. So I knew to expect something different when I ended up training at Renzo's, and I took to it really quickly, and I got my blue belt in 6 months. And, from there, I just kind of fell in love with the BJJ aspect of it.
When you decided to open your own school, had you already been training in BJJ, or was it before that?
I had already been training in BJJ. It was right before getting my purple belt from my instructor. I approached him about becoming an affiliate school, and I waited till I got my purple belt before I started teaching BJJ in the gi. But I was teaching MMA and I was teaching judo in the gi at my school. And then as soon as I got my purple belt, I added some gi classes. I always knew I wanted to open a place. Once I had 10 years of training under my belt, that was kind of my measuring stick,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it just so happened to work out that way.
Think back to that very first time as a green belt when you helped teach a class, and I think you said you were teaching the cardio kickboxing or whatever, but think back to that first teaching experience to now. You still teach, workshops and private lessons. Over all those years, what do you think has changed about your teaching style?
I think I apply a lot more about life to the training, stuff that I've come across or things that I've experienced. And I try to apply it to the technique more. I think I didn't have all those experiences back then, so I had a much smaller pool of information to offer my students.
Okay. Now, I know you mentioned that you had to close your school after a while. Was it open long enough? Were you able to take any of your students to black belt?
Yeah, actually, I sold it. I sold it when I got divorced, but I did promote my first black belt before selling it. He was one of my instructors.
Okay.
And I was super proud of him, and he has his own school now, and a lot of my students ended up going to him.
Nice.
So proud of him. We had a little falling out for a little while, but it's all water under the bridge now.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
But we were open for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay. And you said now you teach mostly just privates and workshops. Do you travel a lot for workshops or?
No, I do them mostly in Manhattan.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a wellness company that books me on for different companies, and I do virtual. So when they're virtual, obviously they can be anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's great. I really enjoy it.
What you're teaching now, is it a combination of the three arts still? Or are you focusing mostly on BJJ? Is it?
I focus heavily on self-defense,
Okay.
whether it's in my privates or it's in my workshops. My workshops are a combination of self-defense techniques and mindfulness techniques, and really learning about how trauma can affect your perspective, and how, if you're not aware of how another person can be triggered, you may get into a situation that's avoidable. So it's really about awareness and understanding your own reactions and responses,
Okay.
and those of the other people that you're dealing with. So I don't just like to talk about the physical side of it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just know there are so many layers to any kind of potentially violent situation, and there's so many opportunities to de-escalate. So I emphasize a lot of that in my classes now.
Okay. And I know we talked a little bit about the competition, but in your email, you mentioned you actually got a gold medal at the inaugural Masters Worlds in 2012 as a brown belt. Talk a little bit about that experience. What was that like?
Oh man, that was amazing. That's when I cracked the code on competition. A few weeks before that competition, I was like so depressed, and I was hating training, and training was going really terribly, and I wanted to quit. And I told my wife, my ex-wife, look, I'm going to quit. I'm going to sell the school. I'm done. I just can't stand it anymore. You know, training was just kicking my butt. And one day she's like, look, just go train, just try to forget about it, you know, and then you can decide afterwards what you're going to do. And then that day, I decided that whatever happened at the competition, it didn't matter. Nobody would care if I won or lost. Nobody was going to think less of me. It was fine, you know. I was feeling a lot of pressure because I had students at the time, and I was afraid that, you know, if I failed, my students would look down on that. So that day I went and I trained without any pressure, and I had the best session maybe I've ever had. And I was convinced I'm going to win this tournament for sure, 100%. And from that moment on, I was just like, I was in the best mood. The training sessions were amazing. The flight out to California was perfect. Before the competition, I was so relaxed that I was taking a nap before it was time for me to fight.
Nice.
It was just perfect, you know. I won the final with the exact technique and the exact combination that I saw in my head. And my whole team won. My instructor won his division. It was the greatest weekend I think that I'd ever had up to that point.
Wow.
And everything was just perfect. And I felt like, well, I've conquered the nerves of competition that plagued me for so long, you know. So it was a huge moment.
And was that BJJ?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was BJJ. Yeah.
Okay. How many matches did you have throughout the weekend?
I only had 3 matches, and one guy actually, he missed weight, and I felt like he could have made weight. He wasn't trying hard enough.
Okay.
But who am I to say that? Yeah, so it wasn't a huge bracket, but I felt like my cardio was so good that even if it would have been a couple more matches, I know I would have been fine.
Okay. So how strict is the weight restrictions in a BJJ tournament, you know, compared to, I've seen it in wrestling, high school wrestling and stuff, and college wrestling. I've seen it in MMA. How strict is it in BJJ?
I mean, it's strict. It's they'll weigh you right before you go out for your match.
Okay.
So you don't even really have time to carb up or to get more fluids in you or anything, you know, to make up for the weight.
Yeah.
So
you pretty much, you have to compete at your walking around weight. Well,
everybody ends up dieting down, you know, but I always like to float around the competition weight. So I knew that I wouldn't be emaciated when it was time to fight.
Yeah.
You know?
I know I've had that discussion with so many guests on my show, especially about MMA. And my personal opinion, because I used to judge MMA, so I used to see it a lot, where they weigh in the night before, and then basically over the next 24 hours, you're gaining 30 pounds and packing on the car. And it's like, I've always thought they should weigh you in the day of the fights, and people should, if you are going to walk into the cage at 175, you should be fighting at 175, not 155. I mean, to me, in my head, that makes sense. And I don't know, some of those MMA guys are diehard, and they argue with me about it, like, oh no, but this and this. I'm like, no, but if you're actually 175 and you walk in, that should be the weight you're fighting at. That makes no sense.
Yeah, and it's so unhealthy too. I mean,
big time.
You know, drain that kind of fluid and then have your brain take trauma. It's not smart.
Yep. I've talked to guys that drop as much as 35 pounds before a fight.
Wow.
And it's then 24 hours, you're literally 30 pounds heavier than when you weighed in. He goes, yeah. I go, that should be the fight weight because that's what you actually weigh.
Yeah.
Your opponent's doing the same thing, so you should both be fighting at 175.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and some guys can just blow up and look like a mountain of muscle all of a sudden when
that's crazy.
they put the fluids back in.
Yeah. See, that's one I don't think I'll ever change my mind on. I don't care how many things they come at me with, like, put this. Like, no, it just doesn't make sense. I don't know.
Yeah, there's no like argument that makes it make sense at all.
Exactly.
There's none.
See, I'm glad you feel the same way. Because I was ready to fight you on it. Who knows? Like, come at me, bro. Come on. No. I grew up watching my cousins and stuff do high school wrestling and cut that weight and stuff. And it wasn't probably as drastic for that, but still, I mean, geez, that's just crazy. Seeing sitting in a sauna with 3 layers of clothing on to sweat out those last 5 pounds. I'm like, no thanks.
Yeah. I had a buddy who actually unfortunately passed away, but his last fight, I went to corner him in Atlantic City, and he was like, I think he was like 15 pounds over when we were heading over there.
Wow.
But he was just positive that it'd be no problem to get the weight off. No problem. And I just knew it was going to be a problem, of course. So all night he's got the sauna suit on and he's soaking in Epsom salt and he's in the sauna and he's trying his hardest. And I think with like 6 pounds left, he called it. He's like, I'm not going to be able to make it. Mind you, everybody took the time off. He sold like hundreds of tickets. He had to refund all these people's money, and he didn't have the money.
Yeah, that's not cool. Dang.
Yeah, it was nuts. But he's one of those guys that would struggle like crazy to make weight, and half the time he wouldn't make it,
Wow.
Yeah.
The fastest and most I've ever seen someone lose weight had nothing to do with a fight. It was my Taekwondo instructor was teaching a women's self-defense class, and he used to do this like 6 or 8 week class, and on the final night they had their final test, and he dressed up in those like full padded suits, and they'd have to fight him off for 15 minutes in a dark room, and he wouldn't let any of his assistants do it. It had to be him. And I remember talking to him after the final person went through and he was getting all the gear off, and he took his uniform top off and just wrung it out. It was like a faucet of sweat. And he went and got on the scale. He's like, I just lost 22 pounds tonight. I'm like, oh my God.
What? Oh my God.
And he didn't have it to lose because he was in great shape. I was like, where did that 22 pounds come from?
He must have looked ripped after that, man.
It was insane. I'm like, yeah, I can see why you don't let anyone else do this, but like, geez. Yeah, crazy. So curious, over your years of martial arts, did you ever get into any weapons training?
Just knives. In Haganah, the style of Krav Maga that we trained, we did a little bit of knife fighting.
Okay.
Yeah, knife and stick.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I did work for a company called Premier Martial Arts for a while that did bow staff and nunchucks and things like that. I never did seriously. I played with it a little bit, but nothing serious. And of course, nunchucks from the time I was a kid. I played with nunchucks from the time I was little,
Is there a weapon you've always wanted to learn that you never got to?
I think Kendo is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something I might want to do when I get a little bit older.
It is fun. We have so my core system is traditional Taekwondo, and we have the Korean style of that is Kumdo, and it's essentially the same thing. But yeah, we do. It is fun.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but I enjoy it when I've done it. So.
What is your favorite weapon?
So it's changed over the years. When I was younger, it was nunchuck, and I was actually I was good with it. I bought my first pair of nunchucks when I was 10. We had a local sporting goods store that would sell anything to kids. I bought throwing stars. I bought nunchucks. It's like, yeah. But over the last 10 years, it's become tonfa. That's actually my favorite weapon now.
Well, what is that?
It's very similar to like a side handle baton like the police use.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
A little more traditional, a little thicker, designed a little, not completely round and stuff, but
right.
That's actually one, I don't know why, but that's probably my favorite weapon. And bow staff's in there too, but yeah, I don't know why. I love tonfa. So
seems like a practical weapon too.
Exactly. And I had to look into it because there are some states where like a side handle baton is illegal. So I'm like, I had to make sure I can actually, I remember at one time I was actually, I was probably early 20s. Even before I got my black belt, my instructor gave me a key to the gym. So me and some friends could go on weekends and we get extra training and stuff like that. And I always kept my gear bag in my back seat. And I got pulled over one time for, I can't remember if I ran a stop sign or something, or didn't come to a complete stop, or illegal, whatever it was. And the cop just looked in my back seat and he saw nunchucks and tonfa sitting on my bag. And I can't remember if they were actually illegal, but he's like, asking me all these questions like, oh, I'm on my way to the martial arts gym to teach a private lesson. I was lying completely. he's like, really, where's the gym? And I told him it was like a mile away. And I'm like, you can follow me there if you want. And he followed me there. And I luckily had my key and I took my bag and went inside and I sat in there for an hour to make sure he was gone before I left. But it's like I'm not getting in trouble for this. So
When I was a kid, I got mugged.
really,
At gunpoint, right? Like around the corner from where I lived.
holy crap!
So this kid wearing a mask, he mugs me, he steals my ring and my bracelet, and then he kicks me and he tells me to start running. Now I didn't want to run because that was my dad's ring, and I was more afraid of my dad than I was of his gun. So the guy's like, run, you better run or I'm gonna shoot you. So I start running, but I start yelling my brother's name as I'm running, and my brother was like one of the neighborhood tough guys. So I call my brother, and my brother comes out. He's like, what's going on? I said, look, I just got robbed. So he goes and he gets a machete. Now, so my brother grabs a machete. I grab my nunchucks. That's the first thing I did. I grab my nunchucks. I stick them in my jacket. And my mom's like, where are you guys going? I was like, nothing, Mom. We'll be right back. And we head out to find this gunman that just robbed me. And my brother went up to every group of kids that he saw in the area, like every group of tough guys, and put the machete up to their necks and was asking me, was it him? Was it this guy? And I'd look in their eyes because the guy had a mask on. So I had to look into everybody's eyes to see if it was them. And I couldn't find the guy, luckily. But they were all terrified of my brother and his machete and me with my nunchucks.
Wow. So you never got the ring back?
No, never got the ring back, never got the bracelet back.
Dang.
But I mean, I look back on that now and I'm like, that was so insane. What if we did find the guy and he had a gun and I had nunchucks?
Yeah.
You know,
wow.
He was going to win.
That's crazy. God, the things you do as kids.
Yeah.
I love it. So you mentioned, you started writing for some magazines and obviously you've written some books now. How did the writing start? Where did that love of writing come from?
I started writing when I was 12, like around the same time that I started lifting weights and I started therapy. All those three things started at the same time and just as ways to express myself,
Mm-hmm.
So I started writing a lot of poetry as a kid and, just kind of with my angst, putting my angst on paper and just alleviated a lot of stress that way. So that's how it started with poetry and stuff like that. And then in college, I was a journalism major. So when I graduated, I was writing for some magazines like Muscle and Fitness and some other magazines.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a fun time. I was a bodybuilder, so I got to travel to all the competitions around the country and cover them for the magazines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's cool. So do you remember the first article you wrote for a martial arts magazine?
Yeah, it was the review of workout sneakers.
Okay.
It was in Muscle and Fitness. Yeah, it was a big spread actually. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. And then what made you decide to write your first book?
When I sold my school, I was in the midst of a hypomanic episode. So I have a form of bipolar disorder where you can either be, super depressed or you can be what's called hypomanic. So when you're hypomanic, you feel like life is perfect and nothing could ever go wrong. And you've been sent from God on a mission and you just go, delusions of grandeur just go through the roof. So I was in one of these episodes when I was going through my divorce and something happened where I had people covering at my school and I found out that one of them was unhappy. So spur of the moment, I just decided to head over to the school and tell them that I was going to sell. And so happened that day they were having a promotional tournament at my school. Now, I had taken a couple of weeks off because of the divorce. So they hadn't seen me in a couple of weeks. So I walk in with my daughter and I say to them, hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to sell the school. I've always wanted to write a book and I'm going to go do that. And I love you. And that's it. I left. And, when I look back, I realized that I don't want to say that I have regrets, but I regret the way that I did that. I regret the way that I told them.
Okay.
But I knew that I wanted to go write this book. And I knew that it was something that felt like it was a mission that I'd sort of been handed by a higher power, for lack of a better phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I had a lot to say, and I knew that if I didn't get a lot of things off my chest, that they were gonna linger and maybe cause me some distress down the line. So I started writing my thoughts, and my initial draft actually was handwritten, and it was just a bunch of scribble, really, because I didn't want to be able to go back and read it. I wanted to let out all the emotion first, so I just scribbled into a notebook until I was done with the first draft. And then from there, it took me several years to finish that first book.
And how was it received once you released it?
People were surprised at my candor. Got super duper duper personal. And at times I questioned whether I took it too far. And actually, after the first few books went out, my ex-wife called me and asked me to take some stuff out, possible. So I actually went back and I took some stuff out.
Oh.
That was too sensitive for her. And I'd gone through 12 drafts of the book.
Wow.
And the first 5 drafts were all about me whittling away all the vitriolic language that I used, because I had so much anger still left in me after the divorce that I was still a little bit bitter, and I let it all out on the page, So I was okay with going back and changing some things. I didn't feel like I was compromising myself.
Okay. And then after that, did you have the idea for the second book right away, or did you feel like you needed to take some time before you tackled a second project like that?
Well, the first book didn't turn out the way I intended. So
Okay.
The first book, I wanted it to be about jiu-jitsu and martial arts as a metaphor for life and how to navigate mental health issues, but also life in general using martial arts principles. But I was cycling heavily between hypomania and depression at the time when I was writing the book. And from day to day, I was different people. So that's how I wrote. I just wrote how I felt on that particular day. So it became this crazy roller coaster of emotion. And it grew into this 500-page kind of monster of my fears and my happiness and my terror, my joy, everything. So the second book, when that opportunity came and there was a publisher that reached out to me, I knew that I wanted to write the book that I originally intended with the first book. I wanted to, talk about jiu-jitsu as a metaphor for life. So when it came down to write the second book, the company offered me a contract based on these 3 chapters that I had sent them. So they gave me a deadline to finish it, and I finished it in 3 or 4 days because it had been percolating for so long. The idea was with me for so long that it just flowed out of me pretty easily, and it was so much fun to write. I had never gotten into a zone like that before. It didn't feel like work at all. So yeah, it came out pretty quickly, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out.
Your newest one just came out in May, correct?
In May, yeah.
So any thoughts at all for a third book?
I've got 350 essays on Medium.
Wow.
That I've thought about packaging maybe 20 of them into my next book.
Okay.
Just because there's so much work there. But other than that, I've kind of been dabbling in fiction again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I just finished a short story recently, and I may give another crack at writing screenplays, which I haven't done in years, but I may go back to that also. So we'll see. It's funny, I've been stable as far as my mental health goes for about a year now, after some rocky time. And when I'm stable, the ideas don't flow quite as easily. It's really easy to have these ideas when you're very, very depressed or when you're on cloud 9. You've got lots of ideas floating through you, but when you're stable, it's kind of a dull time when you're used to being at extremes, so it's harder to come up with ideas, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love interviewing authors because that's what my daughter loves writing, and she's into it. And I actually started my first book last fall, nowhere near even close to it being finished. I think I'm 20 pages in. So
yeah, okay. Well, you started though.
Yeah, I started. I got all excited in a week. I did 20 pages. I'm all right. And then I took a break, and I haven't started again. So I have a couple ideas to actually sit down. I feel guilty every time I sit down in front of a computer if I work on something other than my podcast, because I'm always so far not really behind on that. It's right now, I think I have around 10 interviews recorded, but not edited. So I'm 2.5 months ahead as far as recording goes. I have the time to actually edit those and everything. So if I sit down and start working on my book when I have podcasts that need to be edited, I feel bad. So that's why the book gets put on the side burner. So one of these days I'll get caught up. We'll see.
Yeah, I just got to set that time every day to write.
Exactly. I should do that. You just an hour a day. I should just start doing it on my lunch break from my real job. When I'm not near my computer, and I can just sit even just with a notebook and scratch it down, and I can just type it out later. So
yeah.
We'll see. I got some ideas. So over your martial arts career, whether it's martial arts or it's some other part of your life, but is there one philosophy for you that stands out that's at the top of your list?
I'll never forget the first day I walked into my sensei's dojo. He had a banner up on the wall that said, "The true master never stops training himself." And that stuck with me. And 25 years later, it stays in my head. And,
Nice.
That's why I still go train, even though I may not want to, or even though I may have aches and pains, or even though I have to keep up with guys that are half my age. Yeah, that are literally half my age. But I have to keep training, if I want to master myself,
Yeah.
And that's the only kind of mastery that matters, mastery over yourself.
I like it. How about a worst martial arts related injury?
Oh, man. I had to scan because there have been so many, but I've still got the scars. So I was training for the Masters Worlds. I forget what year it was, but we were training and the guy broke my grip. I grabbed his gi and he broke my grip. And when he broke my grip, my ring finger on my left hand, it completely bent so that it was facing to the right.
Mm.
I just remember staring at it and it looked so bizarre. And I tried grabbing it and trying to pop it back in, but there was no way this was going to go back in anywhere. So I had to go to the hospital and they had to cut my wedding ring off and put me in surgery and repair it.
Dang.
It was a really bad dislocation, but it was the grossest thing. So I had to train with a cast on my hand for the next couple of weeks for the tournament. So I trained with one hand. And I got the cast off the day before flying to Vegas for the tournament.
Wow.
And I won my first 2 matches and I lost my third. But I made it through the tournament, so.
That's crazy. I don't know why. The finger ones just get me, man. I cringe.
Yeah.
I've seen people arms and legs, and it sometimes barely phases me, but fingers, man. We were just training in class one night. We were grappling, and luckily it wasn't me, but another student. He landed wrong on a throw, and one of his fingers bent straight back and was flat against the back of his hand.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like, dang. So yeah, we were done grappling for the night. And he also had to go to the hospital, but not many things in class have made me cringe like that. But that one I remember. I mean, even myself, when I, in gym class, when I blew out my knee and my knee bent 45 degrees the wrong way, I didn't cringe as much as seeing someone else's finger bend that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that. All right. I got a few fun questions we use to wrap up the show. So let's say you decided you were going to step into the octagon. You were going to take that walk into the cage. What's your MMA walk-up music going to be? What song's playing as you're taking that walk?
Oh, man. Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight.
Nice. We actually had a local fighter that used that song.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yes.
That's my jam, man.
That drum solo,
Yeah.
He had it planned so that drum solo would hit right as he's probably 30 feet from the cage, and he'd do the drum motion with his hands and stuff. And
nice.
Yeah. Yep. I remember that because, like I said, I used to judge local fights, and every time he was on the card, I'm like, oh, I love that song.
Yeah.
That is cool. I'm trying to think if anyone else has picked that on the show yet. I don't think so. We get a lot of, obviously, like Eye of the Tigers and Theme from Rocky.
Yeah.
Mine is You're the Best from the Karate Kid.
That's good.
But I like the ones that aren't typical, things like that and crazy stuff. Even like Metallica, only one person has ever picked Metallica, I think.
Yeah, that's strange.
So yeah, that's cool. I like it. All right. Who are 3, 4, 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
George St. Pierre, Bruce Lee, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Norris. I want to say Benny the Jet.
Yeah.
Those kicks were just amazing. Frank Shamrock for really being the first modern real MMA guy.
Nice.
And maybe Bas Rutten.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, out of all those guys, I've actually tried getting George St. Pierre on the show. No luck. Tried getting Bas Rutten on the show. No luck. I've had Benny on the show. And I've also tried getting Frank Shamrock, and so far no luck. So... But yeah. Benny was fun. He was fun to talk to. Super, super cool guy.
Yeah. I love watching his videos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's just he's such a cool, mellow instructor,
He is. He's such a nice guy. Super nice guy, laid back. But Boss Rutan, I just think he'd be just fun to talk to. Just seeing him in other interviews, he just seems like such a down-to-earth and fun guy.
Yeah, I love the one he talks about the self-defense stuff,
Yeah.
from being a bouncer. Yeah, it's great.
Yep. And I loved him in the movie Here Comes the Boom.
Yeah.
He was, because I had seen him before in other stuff. I never realized how funny he was until I saw him in that movie. Like, he's freaking hilarious. So, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, man. I'll chop him.
All right. Other than yours, favorite martial arts book?
Zen and the Martial Arts.
Joe Hyams. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mine too. No one's picked that in a while. It's probably been, I bet it's been 6 months since someone's mentioned that one, but I love that book. So good.
Yeah, my buddy Josh James recommended that book to me years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that encouraged me to write my book, and he wrote the foreword for my last book too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that I think that was one of the first, that might be one of the first martial arts books I ever bought, was Zen in the Martial Arts. I think the first one I bought was one of the Ed Parker Kempo books, actually. Joe Hyams was probably the second or third, though. It's a good book, it's a quick read. I mean, I've read it multiple times, every time in one sitting.
Yeah.
Which is really good. So, all right, this one you may or may not have an answer for. Favorite martial arts video game? Did you ever get into gaming?
I'm going to say Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Nice. No one has picked that. I actually can't believe no one's picked that. That is old Nintendo, man. I like it.
Yeah.
I only played it a few times because I never had Nintendo. I had to go to my buddies to play that one, but I had Atari, so we didn't get to have Mike Tyson. He's another one I'm trying to get on the show. I'd love to interview Mike Tyson.
Oh yeah. You got to get him on a good day.
That is true. Yes.
He's not feeling good.
Yeah. And I don't know if he still does his podcast or not. I should check, because I used to listen to his podcast all the time when I had to drive for work more often, but I'll have to check.
I can't imagine they would have stopped. It was doing so well. That
so good. He's such a good, and his interview with Evander Holyfield. Wow. Talk about a funny guy and laugh, and the way that he treats the whole earbite thing as a joke, and Evander doesn't bother him. He's like, I was hungry. I'm like, what, did he just say that to Evander Holyfield? Like, wow. Tyson is awesome. I love it. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Oh, man. Favorite martial arts TV show. Well, for me, like I said, Kung Fu Theater was the thing at 3:00 on Saturdays. So, but that was a different movie every week.
Yeah.
So I guess if it qualifies, the Green Hornet, because of Bruce Lee's part.
Yeah. Just because Bruce Lee's in it, it qualifies. Many people have picked that. So you can't go around with that. You watch any of the newer ones in the last 5-10 years?
Cobra Kai, of course.
Love it.
Yeah. Cobra Kai is
Have you watched Warrior yet?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes, I watched Warriors. Fantastic.
Yeah. I had Brett Chan, the stunt coordinator, on the show, fight choreographer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's one I didn't see it until it hit Netflix, and I binged the whole thing in a week. So good.
Same here. I got my sister into it. She was so into the show.
Nice. Yeah. I'm trying to get a few people from the show on there that have been on the show, and so far no luck on that either. But yeah, it's just so good. I think I've watched it 2 or 3 times now, and amazing acting, amazing storytelling, amazing choreography. It's one of the better ones that have come out absolutely in the last 10, 20 years.
Has he done anything else? The guy that plays the lead in that?
I don't know if he's done, I'm trying to think if he's done any other martial arts stuff. Actually, just researching him again the other day, because I really want to. I know his name's Andrew Koji. What is he? I know I've seen him in other stuff. That's right. He was in Boy Kills World. I mean, that's not martial arts, but he was Storm Shadow in Snake Eyes, the Snake Eyes movie.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize, because I saw Snake Eyes before I saw Warrior. So
yeah,
he was also in Bullet Train, the movie that just came out. He was really good in that. Fast and Furious 6. He was uncredited. 2013.
I won't hold that against him.
Yeah, but Boy Kills World, he was good in. I mean, that's a weird movie, but it's good. I mean, if you have demented sense of humor like me. So, but yeah, the only strict martial arts one he's done is Warrior. I mean, he had martial arts fighting in Bullet Train, but Warrior is the only straight martial arts show he's done. But I know he has a martial arts background.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see him in more, and that would be good. With that show, hopefully someone will see it and be like, yeah, you need to do more stuff, because this is really phenomenal.
Yeah, he seems like he's going to be a huge star.
Hope so. All right. We talked about Kung Fu Theater, but how about a favorite martial arts movie?
Kill Bill.
Nice. 1 or 2 or both?
Both collectively.
Yeah. I got to rewatch that. I just watched the sequel to the Old Guard on Netflix, Old Guard 2, and Uma Thurman's in it. So, and she actually held a sword at one point. I'm like, all right, I need to rewatch Kill Bill now this weekend.
Yeah.
And that's when I know he's talked about it at one point and then said no, but I'm still hoping we'll get a sequel, a third one. That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
Such a good movie. And, I was never a huge fan of David Carradine in Kung Fu, but he was really good in Kill Bill. So yeah, we'll see. But all right, final martial arts related question. Now, this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie, but any movie you've seen in your whole life, favorite movie fight scene?
Oh, wow. That's good. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot here big time.
Anything
There's
goes.
so
I
many
mean,
great
people
ones.
have picked Rocky. They have picked Marvel movies, superhero movies. They picked They Live. They picked Princess Bride. I mean, you name it. People have thought of it. So,
It's pretty hard to beat, and this is super recent, but in that last Wolverine movie, the fight scene where what's the name of the other character in that movie?
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Deadpool, right. Deadpool and Wolverine, when the two of them are fighting, that they go through the bus and everything.
Yes.
That's the sickest scene I think that's ever been shot.
No one's picked that yet. That's a good pick.
It's ridiculous. It's so brutal and it's so like raw, and I mean it's the intensity and just you can feel every slash in that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like it looks like there's no cuts the whole time. It's just incredible.
Then you compare that to like the opening scene when he's dancing.
Yeah.
It's like two of the most, totally different fight scenes, but they're both phenomenal in the same movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, him and Wolverine fighting is, oh wow, just so good. Now
I'm a huge fan of the John Wick films, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
And the fight scenes in those, I mean, are just top notch. You don't get better than John Wick.
Yeah. And this one, I almost have a different answer every time I ask this question for myself, because it's just always, now I kind of want to steal yours, because when I first started asking the question, my pick, and I held on to it for like a good year, was in the Matt Damon Jason Bourne movie. The scene when he's on the park bench and the cops wake him up. That just like 15-second scene where he just takes out both.
Yeah.
Like, I love that. And then I've also used the one in Perfect Weapon, Jeff Speakman, when they try taking his wallet and he takes out like 4 guys. So those are always two of my favorite. But man, I'm kind of leaning towards the Wolverine Deadpool fight now. I like that one.
Yeah. I think I might go watch that again tonight.
I may have to also, since my podcast episode for tomorrow is already edited, I might actually relax and watch a movie tonight. We'll see.
Oh, there you go. Or work on your book.
Oh, you just had to say that. Or get a jump on next week's podcast episode.
There you go. No, watch the movie. Give yourself a break.
Yeah, I know. I got a few plans to start working on the book. I just need to initiate them and we'll see. But I need to. I really want to do it. So we'll see. But, well, before I let you go, is there anything I forgot to ask you, or you just want to be sure we get out there before we wrap it up?
I mean, one of the things is that of all the things I've gotten out of martial arts, one of the greatest things has been the help it's given me with my mental health, and just how important it is to express yourself physically, and how martial arts can be that avenue for not just kids, but for adults too. I think sometimes people see the fighting aspect of it and they think that it's all about being a tough guy or a tough woman, but the sense of community that you get from it, and the sense of self and understanding your limits or the lack of limits. And I think it's something that's critical for optimum mental health. So I just think rather than look to other ways of distraction, I think people should think about training to make their lives a little bit better.
I like that. And I agree completely, because I just thinking back to some of the toughest days of my life, I resolved it by going to the gym, hitting the heavy bag or working out with friends. And like you said, the sense of community. I mean, 2-3 of my best friends in the world I met through martial arts.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, I personally think everyone at some point in their life should try it at some point. At least try it for a good solid month. Give it a shot, and you're never too old to try it.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, if you're 75, maybe you're not going to go join Taekwondo or something and throw head high kicks, but there's a style out there for you. Try it. There's so many different styles that are good for people of all ages and all abilities and everything. So just definitely give it a shot.
Yeah, agree.
Well, seriously, man, this has been so fun. I've learned so much about you. I'm going to be ordering your book because I definitely want to read it. I really think people are going to enjoy this episode, and I'm so glad we got to do this.
Thanks, Brian. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.